Okay, so this lecture is about Chapter 3, Understanding and Appreciating the Time Value of Money. So here we're going to answer the age-old question, as your grandmother keeps asking, what's going on with the pizza? What's the matter with the pizza? Pizza used to cost 25 cents when I was younger. Why is it $2.50 a slice today? Why, you could buy a whole pizza pie for less than one slice of pizza today. Now, there's nothing wrong with the pizza, Grandma. There's nothing wrong with the Subway that used to cost you 25 cents to ride that now costs you $2.50, $2.75, whatever it is these days. There's nothing wrong with the house that's now cost 10 times as much as it was when Grandma bought the house. The fact of the matter is that there's something wrong with the money, not the items, because these are what we call food, shelter, clothing. These are what we call real assets. Remember assets from Chapter 2, things that you own, okay? So these are what we call real assets. They have real usefulness, obviously, right? House, where you live, get shelter from the storm, right? Clothes, obviously, to clothe you. Food for which to eat, right? So these things are very obviously self-evident, why they have usefulness and why they are desirable to own. But money is what we call a financial asset, okay? As a financial asset, money goes up and down in value. It can be manipulated by governments, especially since there is no such thing as a gold standard, okay? Because they can print as much or as little as they deem advisable to pay their debts. So, taking that information, we realize that money's value is constantly fluctuating. And pretty much since the end of the Great Depression, back in the 1930s, it's being inflated away. In other words, that the purchasing power of money has been decreasing on a regular basis for at least the past, I would say, 75 years. Okay. One notable exception was 2008, 2009, when we had what we call deflation. But outside that short period of time, money has been decreasing in value. And that's why it costs 10 times more to buy a slice of pizza today than it did then, because the value of money it's been devalued by 90% since those good old days. Okay, we're going to talk about time value of money in two different ways. One, we're going to talk about compounding the return on your money, what we like to call the future value of money. Okay. And that's a very important concept, compound interest, okay? No less than the man of the 20th century, the man voted the most influential person of the 20th century by Time magazine, Albert Einstein, okay, is quoted as saying, compound interest, here he is, there's this picture, okay? Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it, and he who doesn't pays it. Okay, so certainly we want to be somebody who's earning it, not paying it. Okay, another quote from Warren Buffett, basically worth $77 billion, the second richest person, second or third, depending on who you listen to, richest person in America. This quote is saying, "My wealth has come from a combination of living in America, some lucky genes, and compound interest." Okay, so obviously these are pretty influential and powerful men who basically are quoting the same thing, the same mantra, and that is compound interest is a very important component of wealth accumulation, which is basically what this course, of course, is all about. Okay, so we have to understand compound interest and the future value, what they call the future value of money, and those terms we're going to use interchangeably: compound interest, future value. Okay. So those two types of terms. So we're taking a look at it. It starts on page 66. They talk about compounding, the power of time and interest. Okay, the two components of compound interest are term, time, and the rate of return, the rate of interest. Okay, and there are several examples throughout the chapter which tends to underscore the point that the longer you keep your money in something that is earning a decent rate of return, the faster your wealth will accumulate. Okay, so we see a lot of examples of that as we look through the pages in the book. Some obviously very outrageous examples. One on page 66, talking about Manhattan Island, which is purchased by Peter Minuit from Native Americans for $24 in knickknacks and jewelry. Okay. However, at the end of 1626, the Native Americans would have invested their $24 at 8% compounded annually. It would have been worth over $241 trillion by the end of 2015, which basically would have been certainly enough to buy back all of Manhattan and much, much more than that. Okay, so there's one example. There are a lot of different examples in the book. In 2014, it's on page 64. CNN Money reported that the average cost of a wedding was about $86,916. Wow, right? So instead of spending all that money on rubber chicken and hobnobbing with your future in-laws, if you instead put it away in a investment vehicle earning 9% per year over the next 40 years, by the time of retirement, you would have over $2.7 million. And certainly with the advent of us living longer and longer lives, the need for putting monies away early and investing and accumulating returns over a protracted period of time has never been more important than it is today. Okay, and I know what you're thinking. You know, you're out there saying, "Well, Davidoff, you can't get that kind of return, 9%, 6% return today." No. You put your money in the bank, you'll be lucky to get 1%. Okay. But again, the point is that putting the money in a bank, okay, a monetary asset, should not be viewed as an investment, okay? Especially for people who are younger, with a lot of years of earning potential ahead of them, you've got to start investing in the financial markets, where the returns are significantly higher, okay? Just to show you that point of view, I've got a historical data, statistics on the average of the stock market returns over the past, I would say, about 30 years. Okay, and in that 30-year period of time, I will tell you, the stock market has gone down 1, 2, 3, 4 years of those 30 years. Okay, the stock market returns to date, 2017, and this is being recorded in June. So this is a 6-month return, 8.6% for the 6 months. Okay, the year before that, nearly 12%. Okay. And many, many years of double-digit returns within the last 30 years. So certainly you can get that 6% pretty. Yes, you can get that 9% return by investing in the financial markets and by consistently adding to your investments over a protracted period of time. We're talking 30 years, we're talking 40 years, we're maybe talking 50 years, right, between now and retirement. So that's an important thing to take note of as you look through the chapter. Now, how do you figure out future value? Okay, how do you calculate that? We're going to be using the appendices in the end of the book. Okay, and the appendices in the end of the book basically give us all we need to know. Okay, in our class in order to calculate future values. Okay, first we have Appendix A. Okay, the compound sum of 1, or the future value of 1, okay? This basically measures the situation where you take money, you put it in an investment, okay, at a certain rate of return over a certain period of time, and you walk away. You come back after the period of time is up and see what your money has grown to, okay? This presupposes that there is you put away $1, obviously just multiply whatever the factor is by the amount of money you put away, whether it's $1,000, $500, $800, whatever it is, to find out basically what your money, your investment will grow to over a period of time. So you'll see that in the left-hand column, letter N stands for the number of years, okay, that you're putting your money away. And then you'll see in the top row, percentages. And the percentages, obviously, that's your rate of return over that period of time. So you assume a rate of return, you assume a number of years, and you'll find a factor, multiply the factor by the investment, and you'll find out what your money will grow to over that period of time. Okay. So just to take as an example, let's say we're putting our money away for 8 years at 9%. Okay, 8 years at 9%. So N would be 8, first column. N would be 8, and then the row 9%. Go down the 9% row and see where 9% intersects with 8. and you'll see it's 1.993, which means $1 put away for 8 years at 9% will go to $1.99. Right? Obviously, if it's $1,000, then it will grow to $1,993. Okay, that's an example. So that's how it would work in the situation where you want to calculate how much, you put your money in a typical investment, whether it's the financial markets or a bank or somewhere else. Take the rate of return, figure out the number of years that you're putting it away, and you'll get your total return, the total amount that will be there at the end of the period of time. We're going to assume probably for the purposes of our course in this chapter an annual compounding rate. Obviously, compounding could happen much more frequently. It could be on a monthly basis, a daily basis, a quarterly basis. We'll be talking about the compounding frequency in future chapters. But for purposes of this chapter, trying to figure out the mechanics of the time value of money, we're going to probably assume an annual rate of return. If you take a look at the assignment at the end of the chapter that we're going to do in class, you're going to see that basically where they wanted you to assume a monthly compounding frequency. I told you not to do that, to assume an annual compounding frequency. Also, by looking at that, the assignment, you also notice that I changed the rates of return to make them round numbers. So there's like a 4 3/4 rate of return, and maybe to a 5% rate of return, just so that we could use the charts. And we don't have to go through these the need to get a financial calculator. By the way, on page 64 and page 65, they talk about calculators and using financial calculators, and I'm not going to hold you responsible for that. You can actually go to those 2 pages. Because we're going to be using the charts, as I said, the appendices at the end of the chapter. No question about that, and making our calculations. So that's the future value of $1, basically, and how that works. As I say, tremendous, just tremendous examples throughout the book. Page 68. Stop and think. Okay. If you receive an inheritance of $25,000 and invested at 6%, over a 40-year period, it'll grow to $257,125. Okay. Now, if instead of 6% you had an average rate of return of 12%, okay, you might think, well, 12% is twice 6% return, so therefore I would get double the money over the same period of time, and you would be wrong. As you can see, if you have a 12% rate of return, then that same $25,000 will grow to over $2.3 million, okay? Almost 10 times the amount at the rate of 6%, okay? And that is what Einstein calls the miracle of compound interest, okay? The fact that earning money on top of money over a protracted period of time does not appreciate in an arithmetic fashion or a linear fashion. It basically expands well beyond that, and so that you can't compare the rates of return when you get that extra percentage that's going to extrapolate to a much higher rate of return. So geometrically, that's what I'm looking. That was the word I was looking for. Geometrically, not arithmetically. So it's very important to maximize your rate of return and also maximize the number of years you're investing, which is why you need to invest early and invest often. Now, speaking of investing often, this first chart, right, is only to be used, right, when you're making a one-time investment, you're walking away, and then in the future you come back to take a look at what it's grown to. What about investing on a regular basis over a period of time, okay? That's what we call annuities, and that's basically shown to you on page 73. Starts on page 73. Compound annuities, okay? So in this instance, what we're going to do, instead of making a one-time investment, walking away and coming back years later, now we're going to make a regular investment on a regular periodic basis, okay? So we're going to make an investment every year, or every 3 months, or every month, or every, So when we make a stream of periodic payments over a period of time, that's said to be an annuity. Okay? And certainly when it comes to a compound annuity, if you're making a stream of investments over a period of time, you're going to see obviously an outsized rate of return on that. Now, again, back in the back of the book, look at the appendices, and we'll be using these appendices on the midterm exam. I'm going to ask you to make copies of them and bring them into the midterm exam, which will need them in order to answer the questions. We'll take a look at appendix. Hold on there, appendix C. Appendix C, when we're talking about the rate of return, the compound sum of an annuity. Okay. So basically, we're putting away, for argument's sake, we're putting away $1,000 every year over a 5-year period at a rate of return of 12%. Let's say. Okay. Then you once again look at the first column, N. Okay. Get to the 5 years. And then slide your finger over to the 12% column, rate of return of 12%. And so we're putting away $1,000 every year for 5 years and getting a rate of return of 12%. The factor is 6.353, okay, which means at the end of the 5-year period, you would have $6,353. Okay, 5,000 of which, of course, is the amount you invested, right? Because you're investing $1,000 every year for 5 years. But the rest of it, of course, is the rate of return, the compound interest, the compound rate of return that you're getting on your investment, assuming a 12% rate of return over the 5-year period. So that's how an annuity differs from the future value of 1, the compound return of $1 by doing it on a constant basis, year after year after year. Okay. And I'm just looking through the chapter here, and taking a look at some examples of the future value of an annuity. Let's take a look on the bottom page 74, the stop and think. A couple goes out to dinner and a movie 4 times a month. Okay, and it costs them $75 every time they go out to dinner and a movie. One wonders how they find 4 different movies to see every month. But they basically have done it. Now all we're asking them to do is cut down, right, going out 4 times a month to dinner and a movie to 2 times a month, and taking that differential and, of course, investing it. Okay, so if they do that, they go from 4 times a month to 2 times a month. Okay, that's $150 a month or $1,800 a year that they can invest. If they take the $1,800 a year and they invest it, earning a 10% compounded annual return over 30 years, that basically would grow to almost $300,000, $296,089. And so just by cutting back on an expense that was purely discretionary, not cutting it out, cutting it back, right, we can accumulate some serious wealth over a protracted period of time by the time they're ready for retirement. So these are the types of things that we talk about, bottom of page 75. I love these little stop and things because they really give us a practical perspective on this theory. Take one more look at the compounding. Now they want you to empty the change out of your pocket each day. Okay, let's say you have $1 worth of coins every day, set it aside. Okay, by the end of the year, obviously, $1 a day, $365 a year. If you could take that $365, invest it at a rate of return of 12%. Okay, starting this at the age of 18, 50 years later, you would have $876,007. Okay, so this is the type of thing, obviously, that if you start early, it doesn't take much of an investment. We're talking about a buck a day here. It doesn't take much of an investment to accumulate some serious wealth. Wait till you're 33 to start. All of a sudden, that $876,000 is now $157,000, and see, there you go. And they, to emphasize the differential, okay, remember, we're only doing a buck a day at $365 a year. So the difference in your investment between starting at 18 and starting at 33 was only $5,475, and yet your total return, right, was over $700,000 less by starting, waiting to start until the age of 33. So this really behooves you to start your investment plan as early as humanly possible. And to start, how do you start? Chapter 2, we did the budget, right? We found those discretionary items, trying to cut the fat a little bit. those items that where you're spending, that where you really don't need to spend, that instant gratification situation. I always like to use that 24-hour rule, right? You really want to buy something, you saw that advertisement, or you heard about it from a friend, or you're in a mall and you've been confronted with something that really looks interesting, or something that you really would like to purchase. All I'm asking is basically go home, think about it for 24 hours, and then see whether or not you really feel you have that need to go out there and make that non-discretionary, that discretionary purchase 24 hours later. A lot of times, once the emotion is gone surrounding that purchase, all of a sudden you decide, oh, well, I don't need it anyway. And there's a good way to start to accumulate, wealth for yourself, as opposed to making everybody else around you rich. Try to do that for yourself. Again, the pay yourself first concept. So that's the future value end of the chapter, okay? The other part of the chapter deals with present value, okay? And when we talk about present value, we're talking about basically, and it starts on page 68, by the way. We're talking about basically receiving money in the future, okay? And how much that would be worth today, okay? So again, when we talk about money, okay, and basically, we talk about something like a dollar bill. I'll take this dollar bill out of my wallet here, okay, and basically, certainly, it looks the same, right? It's got the same feel, may even have the same serial number, certainly has the same dead president on it, okay? But the fact of the matter is, if you receive this today, it's worth something different than if you receive this 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, okay? And since we operate in an inflationary society, generally, the later you receive it, the less it's going to be worth, right? Hey, listen, you received that dollar back in your grandma's day, right? Basically, that dollar was going to buy you 4 slices of pizza, right? Receive that dollar today, and you're going to go hungry, right? Because you really can't buy 40% of a slice of pizza, right? So that shows you basically the time value of money, okay? So if somebody's going to promise you a payment in the future, okay, that's not worth as much as getting the payment today, right? And another way to look at it is, if I had the payment today, I could invest it today and get a rate of return on it, right? Since I have to wait to get that in the future, it's going to be worth less to me, okay? Now, how much less it's going to be worth to you, that's all a function, right, of the rate of the decrease of the value of money, what we call the inflation rate. Ah, yes. So, basically, and here we're going back into the appendices. Yes, we're going to take a look at Appendix B this time. Appendix B, basically, which is on page, hold on there, hold it, which is on pages 600 and 601, the present value of a dollar, okay? And this tells you basically, okay, if you receive a dollar in the future, and we assume a rate of inflation, that's going to be the percentage, is the rate of inflation, what we call the discount rate, okay? What would that be equivalent to if you got paid today? Okay, so if you got paid in 2 years, okay, and the rate of inflation we assume is 3%. Okay, so if you got paid $100 in 2 years at a 3% inflation rate, and this 3% column, okay, that would be like getting what did I say, $100? It would be like getting $94.30 today. Okay, not that big a deal because it's only 2 years. I'm assuming a very benign inflation rate of 2%, right? But if you weren't going to use that money for 10 years, and we're assuming a 7% rate of inflation, N is 10, the inflation rate of 7%, that would be like getting half, right, or $50 today. So $100 in 10 years at a 7% inflation rate, would be like getting $50.80 today, right, considering that discount rate. So present value concepts certainly do come into play. You have to take them into account whenever you're considering deferring the receipt of income. because of the fact that inflation is going to devalue the worth of the money you're going to be receiving in the future. Just taking a look at some of the examples it might be giving us here. On the bottom, page 71, let's consider the impatient son of wealthy parents. He wants his inheritance now. Okay, he was promised to receive $500,000 in 40 years, and he wants to get it today. Again, assuming the future rate of inflation over that 40-year period, what would it be worth now? Okay, they're assuming a 6% inflation rate over a 40-year period of time. Okay, take your $500,000. Again, go to the Appendix B over on page 600. Okay, hold on there a second. Page 600. Okay, so go to Appendix B there. 40 years, the column of 40, and this 40, the rate of inflation 6%. You see that you got a factor of 0.097. 0.097 times $500,000. Obviously, that's less than 10%. As you see on the bottom, page 71, that'd be like getting $48,500 today. Okay, so quite a stark differential, right, between getting the money 40 years from now and getting the money today in that particular example. So that's what we call present value of a dollar, getting a chunk of money at some point, predetermined point in the future, right, and discounting back. Okay. Where you see present value used more frequently is in the area of annuities. And we're telling that stream of periodic payments. So let's take a look at that. Present value of an annuity starts on page 76. Okay, and there are two ways that basically this comes up fairly frequently. One is where you're looking at a lot of older people who are looking at those horrendous returns in the bank, and of course they're living off their savings, they're living off the return. Basically purchase what they call investment annuities. Okay, so what are investment annuities? Investment annuities are basically buying, making a purchase of a financial product with a financial services company in return for their promise to give you a stream of payments over a period of years. Okay, so basically, give me $100,000 today, or invest $100,000 with this financial company, okay, and they'll give you, in return, $10,000 a year for 12 years, okay? So understanding, obviously, that over that 12-year period of time, they're going to pay you back $120,000, 10,000 times 12, $120,000. So you give me $100,000 now, and I'll give you $120,000 back, okay? You know, is that a good investment? Sounds great, right? Why not give me give somebody $100,000 to get $120,000 back? What's the catch? Time value of money, right? They're not giving it back to you today, right? They're giving it back to you in $10,000 installments over this 12-year period. Okay, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Right? Well, basically, you're going to have to take a look at the present value of an annuity, okay, considering again the future course of inflation, in order to make a determination as to whether that's a good investment. Okay. Also taking into account the fact that this company that's promising to pay you back the money may or may not be around to do it, right? So you know, we can talk about bankruptcy in Chapter 7. A lot of times, you know, you have to be very careful because there is a risk involved when another individual or company promises to pay you back in the future, right, for monies you're going to turn over today. So taking into account the inflation rate, taking into account the risk, you want to get a rate of return that's decent enough so that it becomes a worthwhile investment. Okay. Okay, so looking at Appendix D, that's what we'll use for the present value of an annuity. It's on pages 604 and 605. So we're looking at, again, we're giving up $100,000. We're getting $10,000 back over 12 years, so the end will be 12 in this situation. And then we have to decide what rate of return we would be satisfied with. If let's say, just for argument's sake, 2%, that's the government acknowledged inflation rate, okay? So 2%, the 2% column for 12 years, the factor is 10.575. If you multiply that by $10,000, then you're giving away $100,000, and you'll be getting back the equivalent of $105,750. So it's more than you've given away, okay? But again, 2% assumes that inflation won't go anywhere over the next 12 years, A, and B, it doesn't factor in the fact that there's a risk that the person or the entity or the company paying you back may not be able to make the payment. So I would never be satisfied with the government announced inflation rate. Okay, so if you go out, let's say to 7%, to take into account the fact that inflation may go up and that there's risk associated with a promise to pay you in the future. Well, if you take a look at N is 12 now with 7%, the fact is only 7.943, which means they're giving away the 100,000, right? Basically, the 100,000 will only bring us $10,000 times 7.943 back, or $79,430. Not a good move to give away 100,000 and get back $79,000, the equivalent of $79,000 over the course of the 10-year period. So obviously, just the opposite by the way of future value. You know, in present value, the further out you go, the lower the factor gets. Right? The higher the rate of inflation, and the further out you go in terms of years, the lower the factor gets, which is the exact opposite of compound interest, where the further out you go and the higher the rate of return, the higher the factor gets. So these are the types of things that you have to understand when you're looking at time value of money concepts. One last area when we have time value of money also deals with present value of an annuity is when we talk about loan amortization over on page 79. Okay, so on page 79, they talk about a situation where you wanted to borrow $16,000 on a car loan, 8% interest over a 4-year period. Okay, so once again, in order to figure out what the payments would be, and here you have to use division. Up to now we've been using multiplication, okay, because the payments have been given, and we wanted to find out what basically the sum, the total would be. Okay, so we've had to use multiplication to get from the payment to the total. Okay, but here's one example, and we're going to see this again in the assignment at the end of the text. We're going to go over in class. We're going to see a couple of examples where we've been given the total. We have to go back to figure out the payment. So we're going to use, obviously, the arithmetical function of division in this situation. So we see that we have a $16,000 loan. We're trying to determine the payment, given the fact that we have an 8% interest rate on the loan and a 4-year term, and we're going to make annual payments. So once again, by going back to Appendix D on pages 604 and 605, and using N is 4, and the interest rate is 8%, we find the factor is 3.312. So we're going to take the total amount we have to be back at 16,000. We divide it by 3.312, as you see there on page 79, and come with a payment of $4,831. Now, if you take $4,831 and you multiply it by 4, right? Obviously, the number is going to be significantly higher than the $16,000 you borrowed. Okay, and why is that? Nobody's going to lend you money for a 4-year period to get back the same amount of money, right? Because of the time value of money. They're going to want to get reimbursed for the fact that they've lost the money for a 4-year period of time. And, of course, lending institutions want to make a profit, right? So they have to make more than just the time value of money in order for it to be a profitable venture for them. So $4,831 times 4, that's about 19.2, 19.3 over the 4-year period of time. And that would be enough to satisfy the lending institution that they've lost the money for the 4 years, and they've made enough of a profit on the transaction to make it worth their while, make it an attractive investment for the lending institution, for the bank. Okay, so these are the things we're going to be doing on the homework. Basically, as we look back, we'll be looking at discussion case number 1 on page 88, the curious case of Jinhee Zhu. Okay, and we'll be looking at that. I do have some homework hints, some hints for the going over the problem over in the course documents section of Blackboard. You might want to look at that, and you really should prepare this in advance of our class. You're going to get a lot more out of the problem and the assignment if you have it done ahead of time before we meet in class next time. And I will definitely, hopefully, see you all there. Take care.